Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas.
And today we are talking about every problem has a solution. Now, where you're sitting, that may be really hard to believe in this moment. But we're going to try to kind of dig into this and help you get some perspective on why that's true.
Right. The inspiration for this, I was sitting at breakfast reading the Wall Street Journal, and I came across this article.
As he frequently does.
Yes, ignoring my wife. Trying to ignore her.
Who will not be ignored.
That's right.
You came across an article.
So the article was on a type of therapy that is brief and problem-focused. It's short-term. It generally occurs online. I can't remember the name of it, but that's not important.
Short, brief-oriented therapy. Is that what it was on?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, it was a different name.
It had a different name, but the concept was very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is this, that most people think that in order to change, you have to do this like really deep dive into your unconscious mind and
your childhood and
find out how you were wounded.
All your wounds. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
All your triggers and all this. And most of the time, your problems in this co-parenting / divorce realm have easy solutions that require amending your behavior in some way.
Right, which does sort of have an emotional component because you do have to be able to kind of process your emotions in order to be able to be compliant with those behaviors.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when I'm, talking to people about coaching, I think it's hard to see the value in it sometimes because you think, well, how's that going to help me? And it's like, you don't even understand how much your own behavior is sabotaging you. And that's true in like 99% of cases.
I think that's true. Yeah, in almost every case.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you could change that behavior, it would turn your case around.
Right. Or improve it or whatever stage you're at. If you're at the very bottom and it's going totally against you, you can start to turn the tide. It takes time. If things are going pretty well, let's tweak it and make you look even better and ensure your good outcome even more.
Right. Like, for example, if you're being accused, let's say, of parental I always have a hard time saying that, parental alienation, there may be a subtle way in which you're disrespecting the other person, the other parent to the child, and you might not be aware of it.
Right.
You might not even be aware that you're doing it.
Right.
And the solution often is to come to a professional, a coach, can be a psychologist. We have psychologists that practice this kind of brief problem-focused therapy. But, it's not meant to cure your depression or make you happy or relieve your anxiety. What it's there for is to solve the problem.
To solve a very specific problem.
Yeah. What's the problem?
Right.
Okay. Well, the problem is that you're sending unconscious messages to the child. Right. Unintended messages is the word I was looking for.
Right.
Okay. So first of all, somebody's got to observe that.
Right.
Yeah. So step one is being aware of the problem, right?
That is always the first step. Yes. Right.
So you need to talk to, Tammy's really good at this. It's kind of like, what does Tony Robbins do? He gets these people in and he talks to them for 5 minutes and then he goes right to the heart of the problem, right? He goes, the problem is that, you just need to stop letting your mother control you.
Right. And we're sort of doing that, but we're doing it in a very specific niche, right? And looking at very specific behaviors based on patterns of what we've seen in hundreds of cases and kind of knowing where people go off the rails with this. And again, most people don't even recognize it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to share just a little personal story around this type of therapy. Okay. So you already know the story. You'll know it when I start telling it, but you know all my stories. Yeah. Anyway.
They're good stories.
So when I was first going through a divorce, Thomas and I have talked about this book a lot on the podcast on some of the older episodes. If you've kind of come into us recently, you might not have necessarily heard us talk about it, but there's a great book called Divorce Busting, and it's by a therapist named Michelle Weiner Davis, and she's big on saving marriages. And so her theory is it only takes one person, and you don't need the cooperation of the other person. And it's not a real thick book. It's an easy read. However, you can't, to my knowledge yet, get it on Kindle or anything electronic like that. You got to actually like have the book. And Thomas and I have, we always...
You can probably find it at a used bookstore.
Probably. I was going to say always when...
That's where we found our copy.
Yeah. I was going to say always when we're, in places where there's like a little used bookstore or whatever, we're always like checking it out and looking for that particular book. And we end up, we've ended up giving away our copies over the years. But anyway, I digress. So Michelle Weiner Davis, essentially the premise of this book, I'll give it to you in a nutshell. Get a life.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell. Her theory is, in the very beginning of the relationship, your life that you were living naturally at that time, obviously was made you attractive to your spouse.
Right.
Your spouse had interest in you in that state for whatever that reason was.
You used to find me attractive.
I did once upon a time.
Yeah.
But now so what she's saying is, look, get a life. One of two things will happen. Either it'll draw your spouse back, without them even needing to cooperate in the process, or number two, it won't, but at least you'll have a life again. Right? Instead of sitting and pining for them. And so what she talks about in there is a therapy that is called short, brief oriented therapy. I believe that's the name.
Short and brief?
Short, brief. No, maybe it's not. Maybe
because brief and short are synonyms.
Maybe it's solution brief.
Solution based brief therapy.
Solution based oriented. Anyway, it's like SBOT or SOBT or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember, and this, you have to forgive me, this has been 15 years, right, since I did this. But I got on and started looking for a therapist that does that exact kind of thing. And so I found, because I didn't want to go in and talk about how I feel and blah, blah, blah. And Michelle Weiner Davis's model is it's a short, it's like 8 to 10 sessions or something like that. Right. It's not like we're going to do therapy for the next 3 years or whatever. And so,
and there's no couch involved.
No couch involved. And so, I went to this therapist who was excellent. And I essentially walked in and I said, I'm here to save my marriage. And if you're going to talk to me about anything else, tell me right now so I can turn around and walk out, because that is the problem I am here to solve.
Yeah.
And she said, okay. So you obviously know the ending of the story. It did not work because here I sit with Thomas. And so my marriage.
So why are we talking about if it doesn't work? I'm kidding.
My marriage did go down the drain. Right. It did not work in saving my marriage.
Right.
What it did work in is helping me start to move forward and move myself out of the grief.
Right.
And I've told this story before. It was hard to get up and take a shower. It was hard to function. It was hard to, I didn't eat, I lost a lot of weight very quickly, and all that kind of thing, the divorce diet and all that kind of stuff. So, what it did do was it helped move me, I think, faster than traditional therapy would have, because we were working on a very specific problem and solutions to those problems.
Right.
And so that's a lot of what I love about the coaching is the coaching isn't about diagnosing you or deciding, do you have depression? Do you have anxiety? Are you borderline? Are you a narcissist? Are you, whatever label we want to put on something.
It's not really legal advice either.
It's not legal advice, because it's not about your case. It's not about, it is kind of about the merging of all of those pieces of it. Yeah. But the question becomes, where can we look at this and change your behaviors in a way that, number one, reduces your stress, reduces your anxiety and the negative feelings that you have, and also works in a way that the court will like what they're seeing from you. You're behaving in concert with the way the court wants you to behave. And I think it takes a very unique skill set. I always talk about this. My journey through this is nothing less than divine, because I couldn't possibly have accumulated the variety of skills required to do this effectively without having gone through everything I've gone through.
Right. I just want to make
go
a
ahead.
very fast comment on something I said before, because it didn't work, but it did work. And the way it worked is you got a life.
I got a life, and I found a new mate.
Who?
This tall, handsome lawyer, and so it did.
And if you didn't have a life, I wouldn't have been attracted to her.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
That's the point I wanted to make.
Right, and that's the whole point.
Uh-huh.
And so what it did for me is it started moving me forward. I found a new relationship. I moved on. I was able to let go of my ex-husband. And I tell people, I'm 15 years down the road, and I look back now and I think, what a gift he gave me. I'm
Send him a
serious.
thank you note.
I know that sounds like really
That's
wacky, but really, when I took my vows, I was very committed, as we would hope most people would be, but clearly my ex-husband wasn't. But I was very committed, and I was in it until I died. Right. And if he hadn't had affairs and done the things he did, I would still be in that right now. Right. So really 15 years down the road, given what my life looks like now, that I have a happy marriage, that I have stable adult children who are, thriving in their families and their relationships, that we've been able to build this business, be able to, work from home and all the different things I've always wanted to do. It's like that all started with that core piece of, how do you get a life?
How do you get a life?
Because you're so stuck in the emotions and the pain of it.
And here's the thing: we've seen this over and over again. But we have clients that have started with really bad situations, like supervised visits for 2 hours a week,
right,
with their children. And the only thing that we did was we tweaked their behavior.
Right. Primarily their communication with the other parent.
Right.
But I am telling you, on that client, I said this to somebody the other night, I filtered every single communication between him and his ex-wife for 2 straight years.
Yeah, well, that's true. And most of you, this guy was...
Most people learn a little faster than that.
Most people learn a little faster than that. Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's what I tell my girls. And I say girls, they're ladies, they're women, they're moms. I shouldn't say girls, but one girl to another.
If you're listening, I'm sorry.
I love my ladies. No, I said it, not you.
No, I mean him.
Him. If he's listening,
he might listen to the podcast sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I, that's one of the things that I tell the moms that I work with and the dads, whatever. But I'm specifically talking about kind of my group program, which is for moms. And one of the things I say is like, look, after you're in this for, a while, most of them stay 6 to 12 months, somewhere in that neighborhood. I've got some that have been with me 2 years. But what happens is you start to learn the principles of what we're doing after we're applying this over and over and over and over, and we're tweaking communication and we're looking at things, and you hear me tweaking other people's approaches and all that stuff, and you start to understand the theories behind what you need to do, then you can apply it from here on out. Because particularly if you're co-parenting, this could be a long haul. Right.
It's like I get a call, like once a month I get a call. Usually it's a gal. And
we're the only ones that call. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. We get calls from guys too,
but it starts out with, for the last 3 months, we've had 5 ex-parte hearings on our case. And so I look up the register of actions while she's on the phone, and I see that the case has been going on for like 5 years, and there's been, the initial judgment was the result of a 4-day trial, and then there's an RFO, a request for order here.
Motions. Yeah, motion after motion.
Right.
Yeah.
And this person tells me, and I don't know, whatever I do, I can't,
Court doesn't listen to me.
I'm on supervised visit, and they just won't listen to me because he's an abuser, and he's this, and he's that.
Uh-huh.
And, I start hearing this story, and I go into my Tony Robbins mode. and I say, well, you got to stop this bull, bleep. No, I don't really.
No, you don't.
I mean,
That's not your personality.
I'm not quite that, but
That's more my personality.
I, what I tell her is, well, there are some really powerful things you could do to change the situation, but it would involve changing your behavior.
Right.
Click.
Yeah. People don't want to hear that. I mean, this is hard. This is hard, guys. This involves holding up the mirror, which is not easy to do.
Right.
But here's the thing. Do you want to have success in your case? Do you want to be able to have the court understand what's happening? Do you
Right.
want to get the outcome in your child custody situation that you want? Then you got to be willing to hold up the mirror and do the hard introspective work, because that's what it takes. And I'm not talking about introspective in looking at our child wounds or what our diagnoses are or any of
Right.
that stuff. I'm talking about
Tell me about your father.
yeah. We're not going
We're not going to do that.
we're not going to do Freud's road or anything like
Yeah.
that. We just, when I say looking, the introspection is looking at your own behaviors, looking where you're contributing to the problem, taking responsibility for that, taking steps to change that. And if you do something different, guess what? The other person has to do something different.
Right.
Right. You're not going to get if you keep doing the same thing over and over, you get the same result. Try something
Right.
different.
Right. Yeah. I see people. They're in that rut. They're thinking that if I file one more ex parte, they'll
Which
see.
is an emergency hearing for anybody
Right.
that doesn't know.
Right. If I file one more emergency hearing for custody of the child, they'll see this time what a jerk he is.
Right.
And it's not going to happen.
Right.
It's not going to happen because the court has already formed an opinion of your case. Your case has a reputation.
Yeah.
They see you coming and they go, "Oh no, not this case again."
Well, and it's like Thomas has told the story before about how he was sitting in court waiting for his case to be called. This wasn't his case that this happened on.
Right.
It was a self-represented person, but the self-represented person, in this case, it was a gentleman, and he came in front of the court, and the court said, "You've already filed this motion like the 3 or 4 previous times. How many times are you going to file this motion?" And the guy was like, "As many times as it takes."
I love that story.
And here's the thing
That
about
just
that.
cracks me up. I was sitting next to some attorney in the bench, waiting for the case to be heard, and she whispered over to me, "This guy doesn't even have a clue what he's doing."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Telling the judge over and over and over the same thing isn't going to get you a different result. And actually, by refiling and refiling and refiling, you're essentially saying to that judge, "I think you got it wrong the first time."
Right.
So how likely is that judge to give you the outcome you're looking for? Almost zero.
Yeah. And sometimes the solution, it's at the same time, it's simple and it's radical.
I would say it's simple, but it's difficult.
Yeah, it's sometimes difficult to pull off, and
Yeah.
you need support to do that.
Yeah.
You need the support of a good coach and also your fellow travelers in this child custody.
Yeah.
You need to be in a community of people that are working towards this goal.
Yeah, and or your attorney, obviously. I mean, the people.
I want to give an example.
Oh, okay. I was just going to
Yeah.
add that I don't think that this matters so much whether you have an attorney or not, because that becomes the question a lot. I have self-represented people in my group, and I have people that have attorneys. Some of us don't have the luxury of being able to afford an attorney,
Right.
and that's a situation we're
Well,
in.
an
but-
attorney can only take what you give
That's right.
them. Even the best lawyers, you got a crappy record. You just take what you can get.
Right. If your behavior is not in line with what the court wants to see, that attorney's going to have a hard time getting you the result. So what was the example?
Okay, so the example is this fellow that I represented. I don't know. It's got to have been 10 years. And this guy and his ex-wife were sending nasty grams, and they were nasty, like really bad. Profanity, insulting, name calling, poking at their self-esteem, the whole 9 yards. And we told him the radical thing is the person that stops doing that is going to win the case.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I told him, do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so I told him.
It's somebody we've maintained contact with.
Yeah.
Right.
It's,
Okay.
it's
okay.
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's all you need to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
I really like this person.
Right.
And I told him, well, you've got to stop responding to her in kind. It's a simple solution, but it's hard to do because, a lot of times people have this sensation that if you give ground, you're losing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't give any ground. I have to.
Can't let the other person away with that.
I can't let her away with saying that.
Right.
I've got to fire back. But he stopped firing back, and it didn't happen right away.
Right.
But number one, it changed her.
Right.
Okay, because suddenly she's caught off guard. He's behaving differently. What's going on?
Right.
What's going on here?
Right.
So one of the things that changing your behavior does is it makes the other person's head spin a little bit.
Right.
Which is what you want.
Right.
Okay. And in the case that I was talking about earlier, the person that you were coaching with how he communicated, he was actually able to build trust.
Right.
After her head stopped spinning.
Right.
He was able to get enough trust to actually get some overnight parenting time with his kids.
That's right.
Which is a huge, huge success in that case.
Right.
But with this case, she started to come towards him a little bit. And eventually, the kids wound up with him.
Right.
Because she was not really handling her life.
Right. Well, and I
Yeah.
think she continued a lot of that behavior.
Yeah.
And he stopped.
Right.
And so that's, like I said, that's a big part of it is the court wants to see certain things. And so sometimes people are just like, I don't know why the court's not listening to me. I don't know why the court's not listening to me. And I've seen times where Thomas is standing in front of the judge and maybe he is having a hard time figuring out why the court isn't listening to him on a case too. And I've seen him stop and go, well, Your Honor, what's the court's concern?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
what are you worried about? And and so then, especially in relation to child custody, because
Right.
there's usually a very specific issue. And so then the court says, oh, well, I'm worried about this thing or the other, this or that or the
Right.
other, whatever it is. And then it's kind of like, oh, okay. So we need to focus on proving to the court that we've resolved that concern.
Right.
And what people do is they don't.
They just go, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, right. They don't know. And I'm not, you're not going to know this.
Right.
You're not going to know this. I'm not blaming, you, the listener, for not knowing this. You wouldn't know this. This isn't
Right.
your area
We're
of expertise.
here to help.
That's right. This isn't
Yeah, we're not criticizing you. For
That's
this.
right. This isn't your area of expertise. You would have no way of knowing this. This is something that we've learned over years.
I've learned some of these things the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah. Making the mistake on the case,
And-
right?
Right.
Right.
And in my personal, I remember getting a bad FCS report.
Right.
Where the impression of the FCS recommending counselor was that I, Thomas D. Ferreira, was not as child focused as my ex-wife.
Right.
Now, anybody who knows me, if there's a child in the room, I'm focused on them.
Yeah. Nobody in the world, honestly, just about it is more child focused than Thomas, which is one of the things I loved in the beginning. I had kids. My kids are number one for me in everything I do, and my grandbabies by extension, and of course my daughter-in-laws and everything now. But
the mistake I made.
Yeah.
Let me just tell the people.
Right. Go ahead.
The mistake I made is I told the FCS counselor that I couldn't cooperate with her.
Right.
It was true.
Right.
But
didn't get you the outcome.
Right.
It's sometimes you're being honest and you're giving information that doesn't seem like it's any big red mark against you or whatever. But then the court goes, oh, that's the
They
problem.
want you. Hello, they want me to cooperate.
Right.
They want us to cooperate, even though we hate each other's guts.
Right. Right. It's weird because you'd still be married or still be together or whatever, right? If you have that level of cooperation. So it's kind of counterintuitive. And so, if you're going in front of the court and you can't figure out why they're not listening to you, what you have to do is step back and try to figure out what are they.
What is the problem here?
Yeah, what do they see
Right.
as the problem? Not what do
what are they
you see.
reacting negatively that in your presentation? What are they reacting negatively to?
Right. Right. And if you can start to kind of detach emotionally and figure out what that is instead of
Right.
just fighting. And I will tell you that, there are attorneys in this world that, I mean, you have two kinds, I always say. You have the ones that are, really care about families in this business and are really trying to do their job and advocate and whatever. And then you have some who their approach is more like, well, I want to satisfy my client and advocate for them fiercely and take care of them and do what they want me to do.
And coddle them.
Yes, and I find that's true, especially of younger attorneys, because you don't quite have the experience level yet.
Right. By the time you have the gray hair that I have, it's kind of like.
Listen, I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
you need to change your view.
let's have a discussion,
because that's not how this works. And so, a lot of times you have attorneys who are good attorneys, who are good litigators, but if they're not detaching emotionally from your case and helping you understand what you need to address and how to make your case stronger, even if you're not a person that is, has some major issue like an alcoholic or a this or a that, still, how can we keep tweaking it and keep improving it and keep making your communication better, keep making your interaction with your ex better, keep making things better for your kids? Everybody wins. You get the outcome you're looking for, your kids do better and all that. So that's why going down and watching other cases can be, which is something that Thomas talks about a lot, that he always recommends, because if you go watch your judge handle other cases, you have that emotional disconnect in that moment. And you can apply more of a logical approach to the situation that you can then maybe be able to carry over to your own case.
Yeah, and I think that if there was one thing that people come to us over and over again and need coaching around, it's the negative thinking.
Yeah.
It's the negative thinking, because most family law litigants feel like victims for whatever reason. Even the guy that beats his wife severely and now has domestic violence, and he's losing his kids and he's losing his property because
of his behavior.
Because of his behavior, but he feels like a victim.
We just had that experience with an opposing party where we had
And
the wife and
he's mad at her.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? And the thing is, if he wants to overcome that situation, and you can, we've seen it happen.
Yes.
Okay, but you have to stop being a victim.
Right. And let me just say that Thomas and I were no different.
I was different.
No,
you weren't different.
We were no different. Okay. Our very first date, we talk about this, was in Carlsbad, California.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
We walked on the beach, and all we did for 2 hours was just complain and bemoan about our exes.
That's true. That's how we bonded.
That is how we bonded.
That's how we fell in love.
Yes, over the negativity. It's true. It's true. And there's a certain part of it that just, disliking that other person has a certain good feeling.
See last week's episode.
Yeah. Well, and you feel superior, and you feel like a better person, and you get self-esteem from it. And there's this whole host of psychological things that happen in that process.
Right.
But the problem is, as long as that's where your brain is stuck, you can't move forward. And 99.99999% of people can't just spontaneously pull themselves out of that.
Right. And when I was going through my divorce, I had a coach.
Right. And I had you.
Right. So my coach, who's Brooke Olson, he was really good.
Right.
I thought he was just tremendous, and still do.
Yeah.
And he taught me this technique called reframing. Okay, we're going to take your feelings towards your ex and reframe them.
Right.
And we're going to take the fault out of it, and we're going to try to see it objectively. And she, it was a bad marriage.
Mm.
And it wasn't all her fault.
Right.
Despite my blaming notwithstanding. And if you're holding on to that blaming stance, you're going to come off to the court as vindictive.
Right.
And you're going to be accused of parental alienation. And all these bad things are going to happen to you, and you're not going to know why.
Right.
So you got to come to us as coaches. I do the guys, she does the gals.
Well, I mean, it depends. In our groups, we do guys and gals. One-on-one, we do both.
Right. So, but the idea being your coach will, if they know what they're doing, they're going to help you to reframe that.
Right.
And they're going to help you to change your attitude. And that does two things. Number one, it builds trust in your co-parenting relationship, which takes time.
It takes time,
lots of time. With some exes, longer than others.
There you go. They shall all remain nameless, but that's
right.
a true statement.
Right. So it builds trust. But also, I look great in court. I look, when I go to court on my own case, I look like the greatest guy in the world because we have done what that FCS counselor said way back 15 years ago that she wanted us to do. We look cooperative.
Right.
We look like we have the children's best interests in mind when
Right.
we make decisions.
Right.
We're not attacking each other in open court. We're not vindictive. We're not mean. We don't send nasty grams.
Which doesn't mean that we haven't had disagreements, major disagreements and problems over the years. We certainly have. I mean, we've had CPS level problems. We've had all kinds of stuff. But one of the things that Thomas and I have done is strategically walk that path of doing what we need to do to be cooperative and try to foster that, while also knowing that there's a certain level on which you have to maintain your defenses a little bit because you don't know what the other person's going to do.
Right.
So you do have to protect yourself. I'm not just saying like lay all your guts out and be like whatever, but there's a strategy to it, and you have to understand where that line is. And I always say it's different for different cases. Right. The line is a little different. Some people you can let your guard down a little bit more. Some people you can't.
And you know what's funny about it is I can pretty much tell what the problem is when they've been talking to me for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked to enough people at this point.
Yeah, you can tell, and that's why the therapy is brief.
Right.
It's brief because, okay, we've got this problem. What's the solution?
Right.
Well, we need to teach you how to not react.
Right.
We need to teach you how to reframe.
Right.
And we need to teach you how to present yourself in a way that the court understands and responds to you in a positive way.
Right.
And all of those things are teachable.
Right. Right. Because if you're standing up in court and your whole stance is sort of, look what the other parent's doing, look what the other parent's doing, look what the other parent's doing, and you feel like the court's not listening to you, then the problem is that, I mean, the way I like to describe it is like you're so loud, they can't even hear the other parent, so they can't possibly see the problems with that other parent's behavior.
Right.
Because all they can hear is you, metaphorically. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that.
And you look like the problem.
You look like the problem because you're screaming from the rooftops, and the person's just standing over there from their perspective.
Right.
And so, people tend to be very conclusionary in their statements about the other person, and they tend to attack and things like that. And that's really the opposite of what the court wants to see. I've got a case I'm working on right now that's a VIP client, and it's a 1-to-1. So obviously I get a lot more detail, about the case in that situation. But, dad submitted a request to the court that was so extreme and went so far as to say the child shall never, ever, 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 ever have contact with mom during my parenting time.
Right.
And it's just like, holy cow, I can't even believe an attorney let him put that in writing. So I'm the judge. My choices are I give dad the kid never, ever, ever has any interaction with mom during dad's parenting time. Or I give mom the kid, and mom's going to ensure that dad has parenting time, also has contact, because that's what mom has a history of having done.
Right.
So if I'm the judge, the way I'm looking at that is either, okay, I give the parent a dad, or I give the kid a dad,
Right.
or I give the kid two parents.
Right. Yeah. Mom wins every time.
Right.
in that
Or
situation.
if the roles were reversed, it would be dad that wins. Like whichever parent is doing that supporting. In this
Right.
case, it just happened to be dad that put this into his
Right. And it's
thing.
and it's a tweak.
Right.
It's a what do you call that? A hack.
Right.
You know, it's not.
Thomas
something
is
that-
getting all hip on us now. It's a hack.
Well,
It's a life hack. It's a hashtag divorce life hack.
Yeah, that's
Hey.
hey.
We're gonna tweet that.
That's right. That's going to be next week. No, but it's a hack. It's something that you do. A hack is something that you do
Right.
that's easy to do
Right.
and has a profound impact.
Right.
And well, it's easy to do and it's hard to do.
Right.
But you know, with help, it is easy to do.
Right.
It's easy to identify what to do.
Right. If you have the experience, yes.
If you have the experience, and we've been doing this for now 15 years.
Yeah.
And we have personal experience. We have experience with numbers of litigants. We have mediation clients
Right.
that have gone through this, and you see the same movie over and
You
over
do.
and over again.
You do. You see that
Yeah.
see different people making the exact same mistakes that the previous people did.
Right. So get a coach, and
The moral of the story.
the moral of the story is get a coach, or find a therapist who will work on your
Solution focus.
solution focused therapy. Right.
Right.
Find a if you got somebody that's going to put you on the couch and deal with your fantasy life and all this
In
other
your childhood wounds
you
and
know,
all
all
that.
this, or let you be a victim.
Right.
You know, oh, you're wounded. Let me hug you. Let me you know, you
Right.
need. It's like that commercial, the insurance commercial, the Geico commercial, where
Now we're doing Geico plugs, apparently.
yeah, where it's a drill sergeant being,
Oh, yeah,
being
yeah.
a therapist. He says, "Wow, get it, suck it up," you know.
Yeah. Yeah. He's very, so flat. What did he say? Something like
He says the color yellow makes me sad.
Oh, yeah. Really, that's very interesting. You know what makes me sad? You mamby-pamby. Like, I don't know, something like that. Yeah.
No, and you don't want to go to that extreme.
Right.
But you watch Tony Robbins, and he's not easy with these people.
No.
You know, he's hard on them.
Yes.
He challenges them.
Yes.
And he pushes them all the way to the limit.
Right. He challenges their thinking, and that's why they get breakthroughs.
They get breakthroughs.
Yeah,
Right.
you need to be working with somebody that's not there to soothe you and make you feel better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that the times that you can do that for a client and make them feel better, that kind of thing. But really, you want somebody that's not afraid to be honest with you and call you on what your behaviors are, so that you can improve.
Right.
That's what they're
Hey, do
there
you want
to
to
do.
succeed or not?
Right.
Let's go for success.
Right. Right. Exactly. All right. So we hope that helps you start finding solutions to your various problems. You can always reach us on our website, divorceuniversityonline.com. If you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you get notified as new videos come out each week. If you're listening to the podcast, please rate and review us. And you can also subscribe so you get notified of the podcast release each week. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuniversityonline.com.